Home prices have skyrocketed, and property taxes and homeowners insurance have gone through the roof, making it impossible for most young people to buy a first home. Though some may say different, my generation had it way easier than most Gen X and millennials do now.
You really don't get my generation, Boomer.
Even for a dual-income family making $150,000 a year, being able to afford a home is a struggle. So what do you do once you realize now is not your time to buy? As a buyer, you need to remember that housing markets, interest rates, all of that changes. There's a lot of external factors that go into the housing market. It can be political, it can be global. There are a lot of things that can change the housing market for bad or for good. And interest rates can start off really high and then they can plummet. It just depends on the economic situation and where we're at as a country. So assuming that you'll never be able to afford a home due to the conditions that we're in right now is probably a flawed perspective. The next thing that we've got to really deal with is goal planning. And goal planning is probably one of the most important things that we've got to deal with, because a goal without a plan is just a wish. Just remember that if you were to look back at the people that purchased homes for 3.5% in 2020, they didn't purchase, or they didn't get ready to purchase that home in 2020. They were preparing well before that, 2016, 2017, 2018. They were making their plans. Not only were they making their plans, but they were also getting their down payment, their closing costs, their credit score, all of those things ready to go, so that when they were in that market where they had a 3%, interest rate, they were able to jump in and make something happen. Now, I'm not saying that 3% is going to come along again. Don't get me wrong. I doubt that that's going to happen. It's probably not going to happen in our lifetime, but it could. The main thing here is if the rates drop down to 4.5, you're still pretty close, and that's a great time to buy. But if you're thinking that you can't do it now and you just stop planning and you stop trying, then when the time comes and you're able, you should be able to, you won't be able to. So make sure you're committed. If you're committed, you're going to do the things that are necessary to do now to get you ready for that. Whether it's getting a second job, whether it's doing some, extra gigs on the weekend or some stay-at-home jobs, selling things that you don't need, paying off debts, all of those things can potentially get you even closer, a lot quicker, to being able to buy your home. So the things you need to be focused on the most are, number one, building a budget. Your budget is going to help you determine where your money is going and what it's going to. It's going to help you to really understand that you control your money doesn't control you. And I'll give you an example. It's a stupid example, but it's an example. Years ago, I had a $125 a month Starbucks habit. I didn't know I had that habit. I didn't know that I was spending that much money on Starbucks, but I was. And it was at a time where I really didn't need to spend that much money on Starbucks. But my wife and I sat down, we started coming up with a budget, and I realized, looking through everything, that just for regular coffee, now this is not the $5, mocha frappo, whatever. This is just like black coffee. I was paying $125 a month. That's crazy. And so as soon as we realized that, we pulled that out of the budget. I started to use Aldi coffee, which I love. They got some great German coffees there, and saving myself a ton of money. And then we went through the rest of our budget, found holes in the budget where we were spending money that we really didn't need to spend, that could have go towards paying debts off. We found out we were eating out way too much. We found out that we were indulging in like flash purchases, things that you see it on TV, you want it, you buy it. And by doing that, by coming up with a really good budget, we were able to control our spending, know where our money was going to, and we were able to come up with a plan for how we were going to pay our debts off. The next thing is an emergency fund. You actually have two types of emergency funds you really need to work on. Number one is $1,000 to $2,000 for unforeseen expenses. So let's say, for example, 2 years from now, a year from now, you've got all of your money set to go in and start looking at a house. So you've got your down payment, you've got your closing costs, all of that, and then something unforeseen happens. The tires go out, the car breaks down, whatever the case may be, you have an additional 1,000 or 2,000 that you can put right into that. That's not going to take away from the money that you've saved to be able to purchase a home. So that emergency fund protects your home buying investment so that things, Murphy's Law, if you've never heard of Murphy's Law, look it up. Murphy will kill any plan. If you've got a good plan going down, Murphy will screw it. So by having that emergency fund, now you have the ability to kind of put off those expenses with a little bit of extra cash that you've got in another savings account that you don't touch. And that way, if something bad happens, you're prepared. So the next thing is you've got to start saving down for a down payment and closing costs. Now, bear in mind, probably 85 to 90% of the loans that are being written out there right now are FHA loans. FHA loans are traditionally 3.5% down loans. Now, there's a good and a bad to that. The good is you don't have as much of a down payment as, say, a conventional loan at 5, 10, or 20%. The bad is that you end up paying PMI, which is private mortgage insurance. Private mortgage insurance is $50,000 to $75,000 per $100,000 of loan value. So you could be paying $150, $200 a month just in private mortgage insurance if you don't have enough savings to be able to go with, say, a 20% down FHA. Now, private mortgage insurance will drop off after a certain amount of time, but you're still paying that money. So if you take a 3.5% FHA loan, just remember that private mortgage insurance is going to be there, causing you to pay a little bit more each and every month. So that's something to think about. But with an FHA loan at 3.5%, you still have 2.5% to 3.5%, probably 2.5% to 3% really in all reality, in closing costs in addition to that. So you've got your down payment and you've got your closing costs. Closing costs are basically the monies that go to anyone that touches your paperwork when you're closing your home. So if it's going through the title company, if it's going through whatever processing, anybody that has their hands on your documentation is going to charge you, and they charge you in a very consistent fashion. So 2.5% to 3% for closing costs is pretty much right. Then you still need your escrow deposit, which is your good faith deposit. That can be anywhere from $1,000. I've had people put as much as $75,000 on a $2 or $3 million home, but on a traditional home, on a home that a first-time home buyer would buy, anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500 is pretty much going to be what you'd be looking at. Then you still have money that you need to set aside for inspections, appraisals, all of that stuff. So between the escrow deposit, the inspection, the appraisals, and all of that, I would probably say an additional $2,500. That's above and beyond your emergency fund and above and beyond your down payment and closing costs. Now, if you really wanted to do this so that you're safe, and I know a lot of people don't mind taking risks, but some people really want to be safe, then you're also going to want to save up another 2 or 3 months worth of living expenses so that when you have your money set aside for your down payment and your closing costs, you're not digging into that should something bad happen. That's doesn't necessarily kill anything, but it's always good if you really want to play it safe. I'm not saying most of my customers don't do that. Most of my customers don't have that much saved up, but I wanted to throw that out there just in case, because some people really do want to do that and they have the ability to. All right. The next thing is you've got to start improving your credit score. If you're using something like Credit Karma to check your credit score, stop. It's the worst. It's sometimes 40, 50% or 40, 50 points off. So don't use it. Don't use Credit Karma. I would probably go with Experian. And the good thing about Experian is the free version also allows you to get stuff off of your credit report. So you can report through Experian things that are still on your credit and have them taken off if the ability for that is there. And so Experian's a great way to go. Don't worry about paying the $29.99 or whatever it is a month. Just do the free version and you're going to be fine. But it's going to help you to keep track of your credit and know what your credit score is and know what things need to be taken off or will soon come off of your credit or off of your credit report so that your credit rating can go up. Now, if you want to boost your credit rating, I got a little trick that I learned a long time ago, and it really does work. As you're saving your money, stuff is going to happen. Your TV may go out, you may need a new computer, whatever the case may be. You may need to take a good chunk of money and buy something that is a necessity as you're going through all of this. When you do that, take that money and put it into a special account. So you create a special, like a free checking account in your bank or your credit union. Now you go to your bank or your credit union and say, I want to take a secured loan off of this amount. Let's just call it $2,000. So now you're going to take a secured loan off of that $2,000, and then you're going to have them automatically deduct the payment from that account. So you're really paying it back with money you already have. To the credit companies, whether it's, TransUnion or Equifax or whatever it is, you're making monthly payments, and those monthly payments boost your credit rating. And so it only costs you about $50 for 10 months. So you do this for about 10 months, and all of a sudden you see your credit go up 30 points. It's fantastic. All right, next thing. If you're a first-time home buyer and need help coming up with a plan to buy your first home, I actually have a Calendly link pinned to the comments in the description below. Just go ahead and click that link to make an appointment with me, and we'll talk one-on-one. So learn the market. Know where you want to live. Choose the city, choose the neighborhoods, choose the zip codes, however you want to do it. And don't be afraid to look a little further out. Decide how much you can comfortably afford. One of the things that I've seen people do over and over again that has really ripped their ticket in the end is they've gone for too big a house as a first-time home buyer. Sometimes you're better off going for a smaller home. Think about it. Most people will sell a home and move within 5 to 7 years. If you're a first-time home buyer, you don't know what your life is going to be like 5 to 7 years from now. That $400,000 home that looks so awesome right now, you could possibly buy it now if things worked in your favor, and then find out that a year later or 2 years later, you've got to go to a job offer in some other state, and now you've got to figure out, how am I going to get my money back, and how am I going to be able to make this move when I've got this huge house that I've got to sell? As a first-time home buyer, just remember, you may not be in that first home as long as you think. So you want to buy a smaller home, a home that you can afford that's well under what you can afford to pay, so that you're not, house poor, where the only thing you can afford is just to pay your house payment. So decide on how much you can comfortably afford and how far away you're willing to go to be able to buy that home. There are neighborhoods where you may have to drive an additional 20 minutes to get to work, but it could be a fantastic neighborhood, and it could end up having really nice homes at a price that you can afford. You're not going to be there forever. It's not going to be your forever home. So just think of it in terms of, this is an investment in my future. Use an online mortgage calculator. NerdWallet has a great one, and you can check, and you could put in how much the house is going to cost. You can put in how much your mortgage insurance is going to be, how much your insurance, your homeowner's insurance, and your property taxes are. And you're going to be able to figure out what your payments are. And you want to keep your payments to around 25% of your monthly gross income. By doing that, you're going to be within a comfortable level. You could go up higher than that. I've seen lenders do up to 50%, but that's crazy, because then if anything happens, God forbid, you're going to be stuck with a house payment you can't make, and now your credit's going to be ruined, and you're not going to be able to buy for even a longer time. So, you also need to plan on additional expenses, things like future repairs. If the dishwasher goes out, when you buy a home, it's not like when you're renting. When you're renting, you have a set rent price. So this is your lease price. What you pay in rent, if something breaks, they have to take care of it. Now, granted, they may be charging you a little bit more, but they're not charging you $300 or $400 a month. So if you buy a house and the dishwasher goes out, that's on you. You've got to fix that, or you've got to replace it. And so you've got to have additional money set aside for future repairs, expenses, and all of that. Here's a little something extra to chew on. FHA just dropped the down payment requirement for multifamily loans from 20% down to 5%. That opens the possibility of making your first home a potential source of income. You could live in one unit and rent the others out. That means that you could purchase, say, a duplex, a triplex, or a quadruplex and live in one side and pull money from the others. Now, that does mean that you would end up being your own landlord. Now, you can defer that to a property manager and pay 8 or 10% a month out of the rent, just charge a little bit more, which is fine. You can do that. But just remember, with an FHA multifamily loan, you have to live in one of the units in order to get that 5%. So something to think about. But that puts you in a great position on down the line to have rental property that's actually paying you money when you purchase the home of your dreams one day. So if you're thinking of moving to Tampa Bay or West Central Florida, click that Calendly link that we talked about before in the pinned comments below and set an appointment so we can have a conversation. Look, I know I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. All of this starts with a budget and really getting out of debt. So if you can relieve yourself of consumer debt, like credit cards and car payments and things like that, you're going to be much better off. And your credit score is going to shoot up like you wouldn't believe. One of the best ways that I've seen to get out of debt is to go through the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University program. I highly recommend it, and I put a link in the description as well. If you haven't done so already, check out these other great videos right here.